Just start this. Okay, I'm turning it over to Michele.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michele Forte. I'm the manager for student supports for SUNY Online. I'm also an associate professor in human services for SUNY Empire State College, one of our four-year comprehensive colleges. And I'm very pleased to help co-facilitate our online student panel this morning. I am very happy that Katie Elliott decided to co-facilitate with me. Katie, would you introduce yourself, please?
Happy to. So hi, everyone. My name is Katie Elliott. I am one of the SUNY Online coordinators. And I currently work with students at Plattsburgh, but I have also worked with students at other campuses, online students and on-campus students in my past as well. So I've worked with, the whole spectrum of students, and I'm happy to be here.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to briefly share my screen. If I can casually, I'll talk slow so I can casually find the window I'm supposed to be sharing. There it is. There it is. Okay, here we go. So I want to do this because I've done PowerPoint. There it is. Okay, so this is not going to be a PowerPoint presentation. This is just intended to ground us and to introduce our student panel. So here's our first slide. This is where we are, and this is today's date. It's not letting me advance. Oh God, I hate when it does this. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing. We're just going to keep moving. So the first, the quote that I had on this slideshow to help ground us is a quote that one of our colleagues tweeted out about the summit. And it is, I cannot think of a more important word in 2022 than the word connection. And we've been hearing a lot about connection and relationship building, both with our faculty and the way we design our courses, the way we think through student supports. And so we're very pleased to invite our student panel here to help us think a little bit more about what those connections could look like in their online courses. So I wonder if we could turn to you, our guest speakers, and ask you to introduce yourselves. Francesca, would you start us, please? Would you start, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Francesca DeMola. I'm in my final semester at Empire State College for a Bachelor's of Psychology degree. Yay!
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that's great. Is Kathryn here?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathryn Dubreck. I graduated from Monroe Community College, their online certificate program, and in geospatial technology. And I'm actually doing another program there that's a micro credential now.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. And then we'll go to Sarah.
Well, I'm Sarah. I am a graduate of SUNY Jamestown Community College. It was December of 2020 in Health Information Technology. And then I continued on to SUNY Alfred State. I'm in my senior year as a healthcare management major.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And Maura, are you with us? Are you here?
I'm not sure if Maura was able to attend today.
Okay. Great. Okay, no problem. So Katie, I wonder if I could turn it to you to start us off. We did prepare some questions, but to our audience, we've done these panels a number of years at the summit, and the joy of them is in the interaction between all of you and our panelists. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. I will try to keep a note on that. Alex certainly will help. And let's just start our conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So Michele and I, we had, kind of drafted some questions, kind of centering on your idea of connection and being connected. So as an online student, we're very interested in how you can feel connected to your school, how you feel connected to your instructor, and your fellow students as well. So we can maybe just start off by talking a little bit about first why you became an online student, why you chose to be online, and then also, to start with, what makes you feel connected to your professors as an online student? Sarah or Francesca or Kathryn, feel free to just jump in.
I'll jump in if if that's okay. I know for me, I was a 32-year-old mother when I started this journey. I was in the midst of a divorce, and kind of the one thing that really pushed me towards SUNY Online, when I first showed interest, it wasn't just, oh, okay, here's our program, good luck. I received about 6 phone calls in the span between my initial call and when I applied. You guys kind of never gave up on me from the first moment, and that was such an inspiration to me. It was like, okay, I've had bad experiences in the past, and this might not be one of them. And it wasn't. It was very simple to apply. The mentors are wonderful. They help facilitate everything. And it's just so convenient to have the freedom to kind of dictate your own schedule, especially when you're working and you're a mom. So that's why I chose online learning.
I can jump in next. So I'm going to rewind a bit. When I first started college just out of high school back in the late 90s, also SUNY Jamestown Community College, and then transferred to SUNY Brockport. And at that time, and maybe it was me, there seemed to be very little connection between me. In fact, I don't even know if I had an advisor at that time. And mainly you found out information through your fellow students or your professor if you felt comfortable enough to approach them. And then fast forward to now where, it's 20 years later, and just like you, same thing, like you, there's such a connection between, your advisor, your success coach. They're always there encouraging you, do you need anything? Just shoot me a quick email back, red light, green light, yellow light. Do you need, it's amazing. And to have a feeling that you have a team behind you, pushing you, is motivation in itself. It's wonderful. You really feel like you're part of a team. You're not a student. For me, I chose online. Again, I'm a full-time, I have a full-time career, and I could kind of go at my own pace. So, being able to create my own schedule, I come home, sit at the computer for a couple hours, get dinner ready, same thing the next day. And then my weekends usually are full of my study time, but it's just, saying connection, I do feel a connection to the school. SUNY Alfred more than any of the ones that I've had previously.
I agree with what both of the fellow panelists have said, especially about flexibility. I went to SUNY Geneseo. I did my undergrad there, and now I work full time, 28, and just wanted to continue my education, but I don't have time to go back to a full undergrad program in person. So being online, it's really flexible. I can, if I have a lunch break, I can get some work done, or I can go off and do things and then do my work on the weekend. So I love the flexibility. And then I think the professors I've had are really supportive, especially with online students. So there's a lot of email, reaching out, checking up, like everyone else has said. And even I think kind of a positive of the pandemic, if there is any, is just now everyone is so connected online. There's a lot more event sharing of hey, you can't come in person, but here's a Zoom link or things like that. So I think we're definitely more connected now.
Thank you for that. Katie, I wonder if I could just jump in with, there's a clarifying question in the chat about which of our panelists are with the sort of the individual online campus programs versus the scaled degree programs. Could you help us with that distinction?
Yes, I believe, Francesca, you are one of our SUNY Online students for sure. Sarah, I believe you are as well, right? And Kathryn, can you remind me again which program you're in?
I'm doing a micro credential with Monroe Community College. So I think it's more of their online program, but
Mhm.
I'm happy to be here today either way.
We're happy to have you here as well.
We're,
for sure.
no, we're happy to have you too. And I wanted to say that distinction is more of an internal one. So thank you for letting us know. It's important. I think it's important to some of our audience members to understand sort of where you're coming from and your your position relative to the array of online offerings that we have. So there was no right answer. It was a clarifying question. And then Louise asked, she wonders more about the role of a mentor and a success coach. If you'd like to talk, a few of you have talked about like that, you sent emails, you knew where I was, I felt seen, my words, not yours, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, it'd be great.
I would actually love to talk about that. So when I was 18 years old, the first thing that I heard when I went to college, in a school in Rochester, New York, was, I don't care if you pass or fail because I've already gotten your money. So that was sort of my first experience at 18 years old. And of course, I'm nearly double my age at this point. And there was really nobody to advocate for me back then. And I kind of lost my way and just dropped out. It wasn't for me. There was no support. So for this experience, like I said, when I'm receiving phone call upon phone call, like, hey, Francesca, how you doing? Before any of you even really knew me, it's a feeling that's difficult to describe after you were disappointed by the educational system. And it has continued for the whole year that I've been here. Even if I haven't logged on, the first day of class, it's like, are you okay? Like, just checking in, want to make sure. And that means so, so much for a multitude of different reasons for every different student. Just always feeling like you have someone in your corner for any issues at all. It's awesome. It's wonderful. You all do a fantastic job.
I think I had already said that, I was very similar to your situation. Being in school so long ago and then coming back at a later day. But I think it's important to note that in that time, that 18 or 20 years ago, that was all face-to-face contact, and we felt like we had no support. You could walk down the hall to the faculty office. It just seemed, again, there seems to be so much more of a connection. And again, like I said, I think it's important to note that we're online. Half the time we're not seeing these faculty. It's via Zoom meeting, a phone call, an email, sometimes a text message. But like you, Francesca, I just think the support team behind all of us is absolutely amazing.
So as we sort of predicted, there are 1,000 questions in the chat that are better than and aligned with, yes, Spancha, me too, that are better than and also aligned with the ones that we prepared. So SUNY family, you never disappoint in this regard. Dan, I'm going to come back to your question. Dan has a question about understanding how students feel about the sort of like the automate. So, you all receive this sort of like these automated prompts, right, from the learning management system versus a human being. So maybe we can come back to that. I think that's a really interesting question, but Bancha asked a question about what faculty can do. I say I'll do the chat and then I can never find the question again. Bancha, is it what faculty can do to support online students, correct? Like what other than?
Yeah, that's correct. Other than the best practice in teaching with
Perfect.
updates and feedback and the announcement, just because I'm primarily a faculty developer, and hearing about what these other students are saying about the advisement and like the admissions side of things. I'm just wondering, once they're in class, what how does this connection manifest itself?
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know for me, even though everything is online, the dynamic is actually very tangible, almost as if you were in person. All of my previous professors, I can't possibly brag about them anymore. Not only were they wonderfully intelligent, but they were helpful and they were stern. And it's good to kind of have that dichotomy between humbleness and intelligence. It allows your student to kind of feel pushed to do more while being seen at the same time. It's a really cool dynamic. But I never had any personal issues reaching out to any of my professors. They've always been fantastic. Email, they're very transparent with the best way to reach them. And, you know, even when I did have issues, there were a few times where I said to my professors, I'm like, I don't know if this is right. And they were like, you know what? Nope, you're right. It's okay. No worries. Everything was fixed and it moved right along. And I very much appreciate that degree of humbleness and care when it comes to professors, especially being more flexible with if we have a week to do things, you know, the reason we did things online is kind of to fit around our schedule. So being able to go, okay, well, I'm busy Sunday through Wednesday, I'll get to it Thursday, and have that be perfectly acceptable. It's so helpful and it takes so much pressure off of us.
So Susan Altman wrote in the comments, do you think your age and maturity have something to do with your success at school versus, you know, previous years? And that's exactly what I was going to get at. I was terrified to approach an adult at, you know, at 18, 19 years old. You know, there's no different respect level there than I have now, but as an adult, you know, I was taking a finance class and that terrified me. So, you know, instead of doing, the book was available online, but they also had a paper copy, and I'm old school. I like to highlight, write notes, you know. But to the professor, it probably would have looked like I wasn't online doing my work. So 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said anything. But now, you know, right off the bat, hey, look, I have this paper copy. This is what I'm doing. I want you to know that I'm actually doing the work. I don't want you to think that I'm just waiting until the weekend to, you know, hurry through everything and submit. So I absolutely do think age and maturity play a role in that, especially having gone through it once before. It's completely different now than it was, you know, my first time around.
Absolutely. I definitely think that we're better suited as we get older, but at the same time, I think we also need to recognize that, you know, when these younger adults, when these younger adults do come into school, you know, they're off on their own for their first time, and there's a lot of variables at play. So good support systems might mean the difference between dropping out or immense success for one student, which is why I think the success coaches and the mentors here are so important, because they are so diligent in their jobs.
I'd agree
Kathryn,
with
it
that.
looked like you were going to jump in
Yeah,
there.
thank you. Yeah, I'd agree with what everyone said. When I was younger, like I went to Geneseo right out of high school, and was still kind of figuring out anxiety like issues that I have grown to accept now. So back then it was just harder. Like I don't know that I was afraid necessarily, but it was just harder for me to like ask for help. And now I think it's way easier to just reach out online. It sort of takes away that like anxiety issue of like being in person. So you just reach out, and all the professors I've had online are just like some of the most supportive people I've ever interacted with. So I don't know if that's just SUNY or MCC specifically, but it's great. The support system is indescribable. Everyone's great.
All of the amazing questions are in the chat, so I'm just going to go back to the chat.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
Yeah. Katie, can you pick out, do you want to pick one out?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm just just scrolling through here. There's a good question from Maureen. What do you all think is the most significant form of help that you receive while being an online student?
That's a good question. I would have to say direct response from the professor, just because I don't really think there's kind of any other source better than the professor themselves for clarification. And I would say 98% of the time, they are always right on top of it. I don't think I've ever really waited more than a couple of hours for any response from my professors. When it comes, I do actually have one suggestion. The one thing that I did kind of struggle with a little bit, and it's kind of a very minor complaint, is we used Packback, an external discussion utility for one of our courses, and I love it. It's wonderful. The only thing I kind of wish that Packback had more of was the opportunity for professors to provide you feedback. And that's really the only thing I was kind of lacking throughout that. Like, I love to be able to go into Blackboard and click on my posts and get all the awesome feedback on the side corner. And that was probably the only time I felt like I was missing out a little bit, maybe on the professor to student interactions, but that was a limitation of that particular medium, not the professor.
So Dan, that gets to your question a little bit that you posed earlier in the chat. I just wanted to call that out.
How about Kathryn and Francesca? What are your responses to that? What do you think is the most helpful thing that we can do for supporting you at a distance?
Response time is huge, like Francesca said, but I'd agree. I haven't waited very long at all for a response. Sometimes even on the weekends, which I don't think is expected. But it's nice to know that their professors are out there supporting students beyond the typical Monday to Friday time period, especially with online, because a lot of us do work on the weekends. And then I like the little Starfish notification. So I've received a couple in the past where it's just a quick like, hey, good job. And it's like an automated little keep up the good work email that you get. And it's just like surprised me, and it's random that I feel like it's random that I got one, but it was just a little pick me up that it was like they were thinking about work I've done or work we've been doing and thought I was doing a great job. And I like the little Starfish notes that go out.
I was going to mention that too, Kathryn, the kudos that are sent out through Starfish. Like you said, sometimes they'll just pop up and it's humbling. It's nice to know that you're being thought of. We're not all out there searching for, acceptance, and we know that we're doing a good job, but for somebody to just randomly say, hey, great job, keep up the good work, that's important. But for me also, timely grades so that I know where I stand with each professor, because everybody, everyone teaches differently. And, I'm when I submit my assignments, I'm geared toward I don't plan on leaving my current place of employment. So school for me is focused on how can I adapt this to what I'm doing, so having the grades back quick, but also notes in there, hey, good job, or, maybe you missed the mark on this one a little bit. Next time, maybe try to, do this or whatever. That's important to me, just so I know where I stand right off the get-go, from the beginning of the class is timely grades and those little notes that are in there.
That's great. Thank you. There's a bunch of us who are involved in the Starfish projects across the campuses. So I'm very happy to hear that. There's a few questions I want to make sure we get to. The first one is from Ryan, who wants to know, for those of you who are working while going to school, do you have any employer support, like benefits that they champion you? And then if not, or if yes, how could your organization maybe better describe you? Talk maybe a little bit about that interaction between your employer and school.
My coworkers and my boss are always asking how school's going, which I think is really encouraging. They care about me outside of work, want to know how things are going. And I'm very lucky to have a flexible boss, because he let me take an hour off of work to participate in this panel this morning. I normally work 9 to 5. I work at a town hall, so it's nice that I had that support and recognition to like continue doing good things out of work. So I appreciate that.
The same for me. The flexibility is great and there's tons of encouragement. We have a few small scholarship programs that are minimal amounts, but I received one 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. But there's only 4 or 5 of them, and many of them are geared toward specific, like if, there's a nursing scholarship, there's continuing education, there's a couple other ones. I'm only eligible for maybe 1 or 2 of those. And I also work for a not-for-profit. So I guess in the back of my mind, knowing, with all the student loans I'm racking up, paying on them for so long, and then there's potential for, aid forgiveness and, repayment forgiveness or whatever it's called. But like Kathryn said, the flexibility is huge. I mean, I took the day off today to sit at home and join the panel. But there's been times too where I needed extra time for, a research project. And, I would say, hey, do you mind if I take a few hours off this Friday? Because, I really can use the time home by myself to focus and study. And it's always given. I mean, my work is very supportive in what I'm doing.
Michele, there was another question in the chat that I thought was very interesting. From Brian, it's talked about speaking about your connection to your classmates as an online student. So that is something that the coordinators and coaches are thinking a lot about as well. And so I'd be really interested to hear from our student panelists. Do you feel connected to your fellow classmates? And if you do, or if you don't, is that an important piece as you're an online student?
I personally would like to have been able to see my classmates, maybe just like in a one-time icebreaker Zoom meeting. It's so cool to kind of be able to put a face and a tone, because you lose the nuance in writing. You can only kind of convey that, so your personality so much, especially when you're attempting to do formal writing, because we're sort of expected to limit our punctuation and not use emojis. So it's more interesting to be able to kind of connect all that together. And then when you read their the things that they write later on, you get to sort of put that all together and you're like, okay, I can hear this person now kind of come through more. But as far as intellectual discussion goes, the forums, everything, it's all been very easy to use. So when it comes to sharing ideas, I think it's definitely wonderful on that aspect. I haven't really had any issues to complain when it comes to that.
I think it's important too to get to know your classmates, especially those of the ones that are with you in your major that are, going through this journey together. I can remember when I first started with SUNY Alfred last January, and the advisor had sent out an email to all the healthcare management majors saying, here's your curriculums, welcome to the first semester, this and that. And then as I'm going through each class, I'm thinking, oh, I remember that name from, the last class, or, oh, geez, they are still here. They didn't graduate from 2 classes ago. I remember this name, but I don't know their face and I don't know who they are. It would be very nice to be able to connect to them somehow, even if it's through Blackboard or Starfish or whatnot, At my time at SUNY JCC, there was a group of us that got together toward the end of medical coding and billing class, and just kind of studied for the final together and got to know each other that way. But that was right before I graduated. So had that happened, early on, I knew their names. I knew that they were in class with me, but I had no idea who they were, like I said. So had that happened early on, I think the connection would have been stronger. And, I think maybe even the discussions would have been a little more in depth.
Thank you for that. There are 2 questions about orientation. So when we get 2, it's popular. So here's sort of like the summary of the questions. Did you attend an orientation? I'm going to add online orientation to the question. And do you remember it? Was it helpful? Did you remember anything about it? So you did the thing, and then did you remember anything about it as you moved forward throughout your studies? Curious about that.
I am completely guilty of not attending one of the visual orientations. I'm going to come right out and say it. I did the rest of the orientation in Blackboard, though. That I did. I read everything too.
And just for curiosity's sake, why was it a time thing? Was it I don't know why I have to do this thing?
It was the 4 children and the dogs and the cats just going mad and me completely forgetting about it, taking a time out upstairs.
I honestly don't recall orientation. I mean, I know that there was a Blackboard orientation. I don't think I attended any sort of, video, or I know there definitely wasn't an in-person orientation, but same, I don't remember much about it. But I also was just transitioning from another school to another SUNY school. So personally, I didn't feel I really needed an orientation because the only thing that was changing for me was the school. I mean, I was still going to be an online learner. I still knew, what my schedule needed to be and whatnot. Do I think it would have been helpful had I attended or had the opportunity? And again, maybe I did, I don't know. I can't say either way, truthfully. As a new person coming into school, I think that it's important, but for my particular case, I like I said, I can't say whether I think it would help or not.
I also did not participate in orientation, so I'm sorry for anyone on here that coordinates that. For me, it was more like I just thought I didn't need to because I had did my undergrad, and I actually went on to grad school before continuing education online. So I thought, well, I've been around the orientation block before. I probably don't need this, but now I'm kind of curious to know what I missed and how it might have changed my experience with online school.
No,
I had a quick question, if I could just jump in, kind of just something Francesca said made me think of this. So when, as student support people for our online students, we think a lot about when we are planning some type of like virtual event or a way to connect or a way to disseminate information. We always have the conversation, what do our adult online students need? Can we present this in a way that's synchronous, such as a live event? Is that better for them? Or is it better for them to have other options as well? So I would just be interested in your opinions on that for something like an orientation or any other, like a webinar about, study skills, just as an example, or something like that. What do you find most helpful? Whether it be kind of a live event where you can connect in person through the computer, or more information you can access at any point.
I'm definitely on board with the information you can access anytime. Just, once you kind of get into that whole schedule of work, or you have children, or you have all these things going on, being able to just kind of click on a YouTube video or read an article, it's very similar to our online educational experience. It becomes accessible kind of whenever we want. But I do think, like everyone else is saying, that there's value for newer students. We've kind of been around the block a few times, so we vaguely know what to expect, especially when it comes to financial aid and things like that. So do not take, my opinion as, oh, you definitely don't need it, because I bet it definitely helps many, many people. Just like I said, we're older, we've done it, and we're just more experienced. So it's really the only thing we have.
I think they're both equally as important. I think knowing that there's an option to attend a live event is great, because I think sometimes questions come up in those live events that you might not think of in an in a video orientation that you're just going to watch somewhere else. And then it's more time consuming to have to ask a question, wait for a response, where in a live presentation, you can kind of just go back and forth with the conversation. But I also think it's important to have that video so that, if I can't take the time off work, or, Francesca has to put her kids on the bus and can't, get to that right away, there's the option of being able to, oh, it's 11 o'clock, the kids are to bed or whatever, I can jump on and watch this quick. So I think it's important to have both, if that makes sense.
That is really helpful. Thank you both.
So we have a question that's a little bit up in the chat. So there's sort of a few threads now going on. There's questions about extra social activities, right? Like extracurricular activities. Like, would you attend a virtual coffee shop, right? Or something like that. And then we have a thread about activities and assessments that you found work best for your learning. And then questions about sort of flexibility of, I'm going to summarize it a little bit, flexibility of faculty relative to those assignments. So I wonder if we could pick up on the academic side and then maybe flick back to the social side, just for the purposes of getting a range of questions. So the question is, what activities or assessments do you feel work best for your learning, maybe most challenged you in the online environment? So it sounds like some of you have like the face-to-face piece, and then you have obviously the online piece. What got you most excited about learning in your online courses?
I loved the interactive tools. Even though I'm studying psychology, people may think, well, how do you really do that? But in several of my classes, I'll use cognitive psychology and my counseling theories courses. In counseling theories, we were able to consistently watch tangible demonstrations of these counseling techniques and application. And it was, when you read about things in a book, it's not the same as having an example right in front of you. And that was amazing and so beneficial. And then for my cognitive psychology course, we had little experiments that we could run, and it not only proved the points that we were reading, but it also told us a lot about ourselves, and it kind of gives you time to reflect, and it pushes that both your learning and your desire to learn when you're experiencing those theories, tangibly. So for me, anything that kind of actively engages was most helpful for me, other than just reading or listening or watching a lecture.
I'm on the same page. For me, I don't necessarily know that like there's a specific assessment, but homework assignments that make you dig in, not even just necessarily in the text, but make you think outside the box and, look for information elsewhere. Maybe that's more of a personal assessment, to myself. But I have actually had professors that have jumped into discussions, which I think is great too, because they're providing you feedback there. And that's sort of an assessment as well. Either, saying, hey, continue, where you're going with this, or, maybe sliding you back on track. So I think that's a great way to, know that you're right on point there.
That's great, thank you. And then sort of an affinity question, I guess, is how do you feel? How do you feel about, so of course we have deadlines, right? We have deadlines and due dates. We have to frame the course in some way. But what would be helpful to you relative to those deadlines? What makes the most sense to you in terms of how faculty organize the courses? How do you feel about strict deadlines versus more flexible deadlines? Does it depend? I guess we're curious about the flexibility on the academic side.
I actually, and I hate to be the person who has to complain, but I just ran into this issue for my first time this semester. So what I will say is clarity is of the utmost importance. I wound up having to withdraw from one of the courses I signed up for this semester to preserve my GPA because the syllabus, the schedule was very ambiguous. And even though we kind of went through a few mentors and everyone's like, no, it must be a mistake. I mean, we had a due date at 9 a.m. on our first day that the semester opened. And it was just like, well, that can't be right. And, even after reaching out directly to the professor and student services, it just, clarity would be just like really, really helpful. And I didn't have this issue with anybody else. For my other professors, it was very, your semester starts on Sunday and it's due midnight the following Sunday. And that was the end of it. And if we needed any extensions, there was any problem, it was just send us an email, and nobody ever had an issue. They were always wonderful. So my one circumstance was a fluke in my own experience with ESC.
So I had a similar experience. I'm all about structure and deadlines. I have to know what day, what time, because that's how I plan my week. If I know, Friday night, I've got an exam due that I need to cram for, and I might need to take a few extra hours off work, I know that in advance. And I know that from the beginning of the semester. In fact, that's kind of how I work. If I know that I've got a big research paper or an exam, a lot of times I'll save my time off throughout the year and say, okay, I'm going to take this Friday, I'm going to take this Tuesday, just to allow myself that time. But I had a similar situation, Francesca, and this was a few years ago. It was a communications class. It was an excellent class, and I learned a lot from it. But the syllabus was all over the place. The deadlines were there, but here's your deadline, but here's your absolute deadline. So within this deadline, you have this discussion, 6 posts on this discussion, but also this assignment is due the next day, and then another discussion. And I had to take my pen and paper out and write in a calendar so that I was more mentally prepared for what I needed. So that structure, deadlines, and I think, like you said, the clarity of knowing when my assignments are due. But to touch on that also, as an adult learner, I've run into tech issues, and I'm the least tech savvy person there is. Aside from throwing my computer out the window and going to buy a new one, that's the only fix. So as an adult learner, where I would have not done this 20 years ago, I would have just said, well, of course, we didn't work much with computers then, but at the same time, 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, I guess I'm not turning in this assignment, where now, it's Sunday night and I'm emailing the professor, I'm emailing my advisor, my success coach saying, look, this is pictures. These are, I can't do this. So I just wanted to touch on that too, as an adult learner, saying, I think we're more apt to reach out and say, here's my situation, I'm sorry, where previously we wouldn't have. But yes, structure and clarity.
I agree. I love having deadlines written out so I can look at my calendar for the month and see. I highlight everything yellow for school so I can see, okay, this week I have A due and then a test on Thursday. So it's nice to have deadlines up front and be able to keep track of them and But I found I've had a couple of classes where we've had a test, and the test window, we had a window from like Thursday to Sunday. So I appreciated the flexibility with that, because you have to sit down and take a test, and like you have work, you have family, you have appointments, whatever. So it's nice that there's deadlines and structure, but also some flexibility mixed in there too.
So I think that you've all raised interesting points about clarity at the onset, right? So we're clear about expectations, and yet if something happens, right, if something comes up, the presence and assistance of your faculty members to maybe push the lines a little bit of that, right? But we can't know what we're pushing if we don't know where we started. So to my ear, as a faculty member, to my ear, I hear you saying, I need to know that discussions begin and end on a particular day. And I also would like you, faculty member, to know that if something happens and I can't get to that discussion, I'd like to be able to reach out to you and have you hear that and get back to me in a timely fashion. And then we can work around a deadline that we understood the deadline, right? Okay, thank you for that.
And I just want to add to, Dan Brent just said that there must be capabilities within a good LMS. I get emails saying, hey, don't forget tonight, this discussion is due. Don't forget this assignment is due at midnight. So that is happening. And then also Marie asked about consistent deadlines, weekly initial post by Wednesday and then final by midnight. Personally, I kind of like the change up from class to class. First one is due on Tuesday, your postings are due by Saturday or Sunday. But that's just me personally. I think maybe for other online students, it might help, if you, again, with my situation, full-time job, I'm pretty regimented with what I do. So if I know for the next year, I'm going to have my discussion, initial post due on Wednesday with the rest, scattered throughout the week, that might help other students. I don't mind, the change up of the schedule, because I can quickly adapt to it.
I agree. I think as long as there are very clear guidelines that I can write down in my little planner and go, okay, it's due this day, then I'm totally fine. But when there's kind of wiggle room and you're looking at instructions going, what does this mean? And you can't get a response from the professor. And then by that time you're locked out and they won't let you back in. That's kind of where it gets very frustrating, because at that point, we're advocating for ourselves and not really getting anywhere. So at that point, like I start to feel a little bit of, helpless. Like humility and humbleness. I love those characteristics in my professors, and 10 out of the 11 professors that I have had, they've all been that way. And it's very helpful.
I just wanted to add something to what Michele was saying about, and what everyone else has been saying about flexibility with professors and being able to reach out and explain a situation and ask for a deadline or extension on something. And I think that's really important just in general of online professors, but also especially now with pandemic and things going on in Eastern Europe, and just the last 2 or 3 years have been really tough, like mentally on a lot of people. So having compassion in that sense it goes a long way for students being successful. And I think that's a huge quality that all the professors that I've experienced with online learning have had. So it's a great thing.
Well, we are all very glad to hear that. And compassion and empathy is, should and could underscore all of our interactions, probably with each other, right? And thank you for adding that. I think it's an important piece. It's an important context. So I said we had some questions about the social side, and you can read up in the chat the specific questions, but I think in some, it's something like the orientation question, but about social opportunities. So we what we all wonder if online students would like opportunities that we help to facilitate, right? Your campuses help to facilitate, to get together. Is it a study group? Is it a coffee thing? Is it another kind of group, right? Is that something that would be important to you, those kinds of connections? Is it something that you would have time to do? So we're curious about that. We're aware of your obligations and schedules outside of college, right? Outside of your college work. So wondered if you could give us some thoughts about that.
I would love to, but I don't have time. I'll be completely honest. And, it stinks. And that's why it's maybe those little Zoom meetings. That's really the only thing I can offer, just because even on the days when work was easy and the kids were easy, most of us kind of take those nights and we're like, oh my God, I can breathe tonight. And then it's another few weeks until you're ready to go out and do something. It's kind of like that joke, call me in 8 weeks and we'll see each other.
I think having the option there wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I'm like Francesca, where, you just get so caught up in your day-to-day activities plus school. I don't know that I would necessarily go into a coffee shop, but I might go into like a group participatory discussion or study session or something like that. I mean, I don't know, maybe something that, could be set up similar to how we schedule meetings through, Starfish with our professor, like have your classmates available to invite them into a room for a study session or something along those lines. I think given what's happened the past 2 years with so much online interaction, it's when I'm going to meet with somebody, I want it to be face-to-face. I want to go to a coffee shop and have coffee with my sister or my best friend or my husband. But I do think having the option, to click a button and say, let's invite this person, this person, this person, and see how many respond. And, the student could even set that up themselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be facilitated by faculty.
Thank you. Yeah. Yep. I like the idea of doing that. And I actually meant virtual, but yeah, that's true. Like setting something up and seeing. A theme, Ryan. Yeah. So Ryan's asking if something like that would be useful, if there was sort of like a guided session or a theme to them. Like, might you be more inclined to do it? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know.
There's also a good question in there from Serena about could you have used an online peer mentor? Would that have been helpful to you? Maybe someone who was a little bit further ahead in their studies than you when you first started, as a guide, kind of?
I would have loved that when I was 18 years old. Like, absolutely loved that. I actually think that's a really great idea, especially maybe from some of the older experienced students, those of us who have more ability to vocally advocate, so to speak. I remember being that scared 18-year-old girl who was terrified of everybody and didn't really know how to talk or speak up for herself. So I feel like if, I was able to kind of guide myself back then, things would maybe be a lot different. So I love that thought.
MCC, actually, the geospatial technology department does have the online peer mentors. I participate as the mentor, not the mentee. And I've been told by other students who I'm like helping, I do it like Sunday nights, that they appreciate it, and they like, some say like they couldn't have done the assignment without my help or like things like that. And it's just really rewarding and refreshing to know that like I'm able to help, like use my online experience and give back and like help someone make their experience better. So I fully support peer mentoring online.
That's really great.
I already gave us our 5-minute warning. I know, Sarah, that's my thought too, because
Went by
these,
fast.
yeah, these hours go by like that. So I wonder if we could have one final question. Katie, I'll turn it to you maybe to bring us home with one question, one
Sure.
final question. No
I
pressure.
guess there still are other questions in the chat that would
Yeah.
be great to address, but I guess with our limited time, just to leave everyone with some final thoughts, maybe since most of us here, our job really is to work to support students and to make their experience better in every way we can, both in the virtual classroom and with the surrounding supports. So just thoughts from you all. The one takeaway, like what can we do as a group to collectively support online students in the best way?
I think you guys have done a great job, like a wonderful, wonderful job. I really can't speak any more highly about any of you. And other than that, I think we kind of touched upon everything else. It seems really maybe flexibility and clarity seems to be the only thing I think we've all kind of agreed on. Besides that, I have no other complaints. I've had a great experience.
I agree. I'd just say keep doing what you've been doing, and we'll add another like check mark to the box of clarity and flexibility.
On the same page. Like I said in the beginning, I've never felt so much support from faculty that I have at my time at SUNY Alfred State. It's just been amazing knowing that there are so many people behind you, pushing you, offering advice and suggestions. And I was actually so nervous about coming into this yesterday that I called my success coach and I'm like, so I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be saying because I don't reach out to you often. She said, but you don't need to. She goes, and you just need to know that we're here if we need you. And knowing that is just awesome. So same, keep doing what you guys are doing. You're doing a great job. And thank you.
Thank all of you so much for attending today and letting us get to know you a little bit.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, we really can't do this without your input. And as you can see from the chat, I mean, we could stay here another hour, but I think we have, Alex, we have another session starting at 11, right? Is that, did I correctly read that?
So just, to kind of wrap this up, I just want to say, echo all of the thanks, and you guys are our inspiration. We do what we do because of you. And so thank you for sharing your observations and your experiences and your suggestions, and congratulations on your efforts and your work and your academic achieving your academic goals. I do, so I want to say, from all of us, thank you very, very much for participating in this session. It's always an amazing experience to hear things straight from students' mouth. And I want to thank Michele also, and her co-pilot there, Kathryn, for facilitating this panel. And then to just talk a little bit about the rest of today. And you all are, I know you're very busy, but in terms of the students, but you're welcome to come to any of the sessions that are presented throughout this whole event. And today, our next session is going to be effective practices for developing and supporting online adjunct faculty, and that will start at 11, so in 1 hour from now. And it's the same link that we've been using for the whole summit to get into the Zoom. Van Davis, who is the Chief Strategy Officer from WCET, will be presenting a research project and very tangible suggestions on supporting online adjunct faculty. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to have an open networking discussion for online faculty. So I hope anyone who's interested in talking about online teaching and learning would attend. So whether or not you're faculty, instructional designers, directors of online learning, librarians, student support folks, anyone's welcome. It's informal, and we're just going to get together and chat. And then later, the last session today from 3 to 4:15 is going to be strategies for culturally responsive online teaching in STEM from some of our friends from Madison College. Rafael Perez and Cassandra Thompson will be here to chat with us about their experiences. That is a fabulous presentation. I hope you don't miss it. They're all fabulous. So again, thanks to the student panelists and to our moderators. And thanks for helping us kick off the 4th day of the summit with such a bang. Again, congratulations to our student panelists and to their success and continued success in their online educational endeavors. Thank you very much.